Hey guys, want to welcome you to our Grow Stack Drive weekday noon live. I have got a very special guest today. I'm Dr. Mudgil from New York City, voted as one of New York's top docs. And I just found out he actually went to school in Atlanta. Hey man, listen, welcome to our podcast today. I'd love for you to take a minute, tell everybody a little bit about who you are and about what you've got going on right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. This is great to be on your platform and to share a bit of my story, man. So I'm a New York City-based dermatologist. I have a practice on Fifth Avenue down to Lower Manhattan, and I live out in Long Island now, which is a suburb. I have 3 kids, 2 dogs now, and we had to move out to the burbs. So I have a practice out here as well, which is where I am today. I'm about to see some patients in about an hour or so. So, like I said, my professional career is as a dermatologist, and I'm also a dermatopathologist, which is the guy that looks at skin under the microscope when someone has a skin biopsy done. And I love what I do. I'm super passionate about it. I love being a doctor. But I got to a point in my life, I'm going to be 45 in about a month. And when I was 42, I grew up from very, very humble beginnings. I came from a very humble background. My mom was a single parent. She was actually a doctor, but she was a government doctor. So it's not like the doctors that think about
right.
In the 90s. It was like, really we were like, not bawling at all. And I have an older brother, and her goal in life was just for us to be doctors, actually. Because for her, it enabled her to break away from a really, horrible marriage and an abusive situation, and allow her to stand on her own 2 feet. And what she always used to tell us is, you boys need to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. And for her, being a doctor was the way to do that. So we both, became doctors, whether it was against our will or not. But both of us love what we do, and we couldn't imagine doing anything else. And I got to a point, man, in my life where I actually, like growing up not having much, I hit a point in my life where I had 2 successful offices, a bunch of people that were working for me, and I achieved a level of financial success that I never even dreamed possible, And, I had a beautiful house, a fleet of European cars, belonged to a golf club, and, I was like, wow, man, I really made it. I arrived, and I was like, I thought that's what success meant, and that's what I wanted to do. But to be honest with you, that was the summer of 2017, and I was literally playing golf like 5 times a week, quote unquote, living the dream. Driving
Right.
my Ferrari to the golf club, and doing all the stuff that I never dreamed of doing as a kid. I was like, wow, and it was a really empty time, and it was a time where I was like, wow, this is like where I'm supposed to feel really good right now. Like, this is where I want to be. I have 3 beautiful kids, a beautiful wife, great practices, a whole situation, working for itself, kind of, and I realized I was 42, and if I'm going to work and say until I'm like even like 70, although I hope I work even longer than that, I never want to stop working. So doing that for another 30 years, kind of living on that plateau, was really that's not me. Like, for me, like really taking a survey of what I'm about and what makes me happy, it's the grind to get there. It's not, this
Right.
is line that I just recently, it's not like going and buying a Ferrari or a Bentley or something like that. It's being able to. It's that struggle to get there.
Right.
And I realized, like, like, what's my purpose? What am I going to do with myself now? And I really, coming from a single household, I was a minority and, like, bullied on in a hugely racist town, like on the South Shore of Long Island,
Mm-hmm.
being the only Indian kid, like one of the few Indian kids there, and if I could do the things that I did, from the background that I came from, and I don't say I worked my ass off, and I worked.
Yeah.
The Rock says the hardest working guy in the room. But if I could do it, anyone can really do it if they're willing to put that grind in. And I was thinking, man, if I was a kid and someone told me that, someone say, hey, you know what? You could do anything you want, and you're gonna have to work really hard, and really kind of planted that seed in my mind. It's so empowering, So I started a podcast. I started posting to social media with that initiative in mind. That, what, if I can do it, you can do it. And there's a grind to it, and it's
I
not
love it.
easy. But
I love it.
my purpose, literally, since March 2018, I've posted to Instagram every single day.
Yeah.
I haven't missed a single day. I started a podcast. I have a TikTok account. I have a YouTube channel.
Now, I haven't gotten into TikTok stuff yet, but all the other things did. I want to ask you a question real quick, because this is fascinating for me. And I said this I coach business owners across the country, and in Europe is one of the businesses that I do. And I love coaching business owners. One of the things I said to a client last week was, and their business is blowing up right now, their first $100,000 product sale to new business They're distributing to Walmart and some big stores. They're seeing success they've never had. And she's like, I'm just not satisfied. And Solana, I said, the strength of every entrepreneur is that they're never satisfied.
Absolutely.
But the weakness of every entrepreneur is they're never satisfied. So you said something just a minute ago that I don't want to skate by. And you said I was playing golf 5 days a week, driving my Ferrari to the golf course, and I was empty. I mean, and again, you didn't come from that, so it was, you thought that place was going to bring you a fulfillment that it didn't bring. Talk to me about that moment in your life where you realized this isn't what it's all about, and what the journey looked like for you to escape out of that.
Sure. That's a great question, man. So, like growing up, I had, my car was, my mom's old Toyota Camry. I had like 250,000 miles on it. That's what I was driving. When I was in scholarship, when I was in medical school, I actually got a scholarship. And I was able to buy like a nicer car. It wasn't like anything fancy or anything like that, but, reliable, good car. And, I guess, that's when I really realized it, the summer of 2017, but it probably been like a slowly brewing process where I was accumulating these things, and I wasn't buying them to be happy. I was buying them because I could. Like, it was like crazy to me that, I mean, when I was a kid, if you told me that I was going to have a Ferrari and a Bentley and those types of things, I'd be like, are you like out of your mind? Like, are you kidding? There's no way. And in fact, where I live now in Long Island, it's the North Shore of Long Island, and I used to live in the South Shore, which is very blue collar, regular town. Houses are kind of on top of each other. Very, very, very middle class. And where I live now was where I used to go to work. So I actually used to valet park cars at the country club I now belong to. I eat at restaurants where I was the valet. And I would see these Ferraris and these Bentleys and stuff pull up. And I was like, oh my God, just to be able to drive them, to park them was like a dream. I was like, this is amazing, And I guess when I was in my 30s, like I was like, wow, I was like, I could literally just get one of these cars that I would have dreamed of having when I was a kid. And that was kind of like intoxicating in a weird way. It's like, wow, I can like do these things that I never dreamed of doing. And it was fun, like it was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I can, I drive around in this car and, and it's cool. It's cool for like a week or two. And then, and then it's just like another thing that you have, so I was living this life full of stuff. And I was always very in touch with my emotions. I love my family. It's not like I was, going crazy, but that particular summer was when everything came to a head, the summer of 2017, where really like my office in Long Island, which I started in 2015, started to kind of gain some momentum. I have a dermatopathology lab, which was growing, where I read slides for other doctors in the New York area. And my practice on Fifth Avenue in the city had been there now. At that point, I started in 2009. It was 8 years old and kind of, cruising on its own. I have a lot of like really, celebrity patients, and, it's a really great office. And that was the summer where little tiny things started like falling apart. So,
like what? Like what? What were some things?
So I wasn't going into the office as much. I was going to my New York City office, I think at that point, maybe like 2.5 days a week. And I would see like tons of patients when I was there. I was seeing patients at my Long Island office 2 days a week, doing pathology the rest of the time. So when I was still working really hard. I was still hustling and grinding when I was working. But I also had a system where things were happening when I wasn't there, right? So kind of like, when I wasn't physically working in the office, I was still generating revenue. And, little tiny staffing issues, things that never really happened before because I just wasn't around as much, a little more turnover. And, I realized that I wasn't around as much. Obviously, the culture of the office will change a little bit, with me not physically being there. Nothing horrible, but it really started me thinking. And I remember October of 2017, I had dinner with one of my friends who's a really successful entrepreneur. And I was like telling him kind of like where I was and like, how I was like, things were good, but I just need to do more. And we really kind of, through that dinner, we kind of just like, we're kind of hashing it out. And I told him, I was like, man, I love The Rock. Like The Rock, who doesn't love The Rock, but he's just,
I get you, man.
Who's like, he just works so hard. He's really like transformed himself through like various phases of life very successfully. So, he was a football player, a professional wrestler. And now he's like the top box office actor, and those aren't like linear progressions. Those are really, he redefined himself, 3 ways. And he did that to the ultimate level. I remember there's one story that The Rock said where he was talking to, I think he was like talking to the Lakers or something like that before one of their games. and he's represented by the same agency as Will Smith. And his first movie came out and it, like, tanked, and his agents he was in a meeting with his agents, and his agents said to him, like, well, like, who do you want to be like? Whose career do you emulate? He's like Will Smith, and he was the biggest actor at the time, and they kind of like laughed at him, and they're like, you can't do that, like, that's Will Smith. But in The Rock's mind, he's like, self-belief. He's like, I can do that. Why can't I do that? And again, so I'm kind of all over the place, but really it was like that point where I realized that, what, I am a dermatologist. I am a doctor in New York City, and that is my job. But why do I have to be unidimensional? Why does that have to be just my job? Why can't I try to inspire and motivate others and, really kind of spread this message of self-empowerment and of achieving dreams through hustling and grinding as hard as you can? And it's funny. So I was going back to this conversation I had with my entrepreneur friend. I said, hey, man, give me like 5 books that are going to get my head in the right place, And there was a point in my life where I was reading all the time, but then with 3 kids and my practices, right, I just stopped reading, But from that dinner, I have never stopped reading. It kind of re-inspired me. But I know you're a Grant Cardone guy. One of the books was the 10X Rule. The other ones, just for anyone's curious, is the E-Myth Revisited, the Michael Gerber book, The One Thing, 4-Hour Work Week, and Gary Vaynerchuk's Crushing It. And each one of those books really, when I read a book, there's like one thing I always take away from it. Like, that's like the one lesson I learned from that book. So for instance, like 10X Rule, the one lesson I took away from that book was accountability. There's like one part of the book where he's talking about if the power goes out in where he lives at, I think he was saying LA or whatever it was at the time. And, most people's gut reaction would be, man, the power company sucks. This town sucks. Like, I love power. And he's like, no. He's like, the fault is that I didn't put a generator in my house, and now my family is suffering because I didn't do something, And it starts with that accountability starts with yourself. That's actually one of my core values is accountability. But, it's that's kind of when this new phase of my life started.
So you went through that and you read these 5 books. And so what it sounds like, I had a mentor in 2000. I spoke at a conference in Michigan, 18,000 people there. And I had dinner with her one night, and she looked across the table. She said, Ken, do you want to be successful or do you want to be significant? Because they're different. And it sounds like you were kind of going through the same thing that Jeannie had told me then. Was there's a difference between, not that success is wrong,
right,
but significance is definitely different. So you're golfing, you're doing literally the American dream. You've come from nothing, humble beginnings, to be super successful, but it's just not satisfying. And then from there, you read some books, 10X Rule being one of those books, and then your journey shifts to wanting to help people understand that, hey, that if I can do this, you can do this. Podcast and some other things. Talk to me about what that journey's looked like since that time.
I'm stealing that line, man. I like that. So being significant. That's a really great way to put it.
Yeah.
So really then at that point, I started, after I read Crushing It, I was like, okay, social media, I have to be much more active on social media. Like, my Instagram account was horrible for my practice, and I didn't have really anything else going on social media wise. So I said, what, I'm going to post this to Instagram every day. And I decided to do that. Like, in February, I said I'm going to be more active. So I'd post a couple of times a week. And then by March, I was like, okay, I'm going to post every single day. So I used to make little videos of like procedures that I did. I'd put some fitness videos up there. I'd do some like, mindset stuff, various videos. And then I actually went to Gary V's 4D in May of 2018. And, it was a great day, I mean, he's a guy that's obviously super inspirational, and like he's the king of using social media to actuate, whatever your goal is. And, during the roundtable discussion, one of the things he said to me was, if you have the resources to deploy for a videographer, like, that's the next step, I think, and I was like, okay. So I put an ad on Craigslist the next day, and I hired a videographer, and that's all these little videos that we make. I have a full-time in-house videographer / producer. And so we started a podcast soon thereafter. I started a YouTube channel soon thereafter. I have a TikTok account, which, believe it or not, is like huge now. Like, it's bigger than my Instagram account. It's amazing.
I love it.
I'm also on Community now, so I'm able to text with my followers.
I've got my interview with Community this Friday.
Nice, cool.
So yeah,
last week. Yes.
Yeah. So I've got my interview Friday, and that was a Gary V thing. Gary's the one that said, "Dude, you gotta get on Community."
Yeah. And yeah, that's been really cool. Like, I get really cool messages from folks. And I wrote a book. I just finished my first book, which I'm still kind of tweaking it a little bit, but it's done. And it's basically about this sort of stuff. Like,
So I want to ask you a question. How many times a week are you playing golf now?
well, during this whole quarantine, it's
Obviously, COVID's a different season.
zero. But I'll play,
Yeah.
honestly now, like during the summer months, I do love golf. So I will play like once or twice a week. I try to play like on Saturday and Sunday mornings if I can. Obviously I haven't been doing that just because of the way the world is now. But like what I'll do is I'll sneak in a 9 like on the weekends. During the week, I'm just too busy now.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
But your level of fulfillment you live at now, would it be fair to say is much higher than it was 3 years ago when you were playing 5 days a week?
Absolutely, Ben. I'm a guy who loves being busy and loves being
Yeah.
productive, and although I was productive and from the outside looking in, it was like, okay, this guy's figured it all out. That's not my happy place. Like my happy place was sleeping in my office 7 days a week, getting it up and running. I literally, in 2008, I was broke as a joke, man. I'm a dollar to my name. I don't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I don't have money back in me. But at that time, it actually was right before the market crashed, and banks were willing to lend to doctors. So I had sold an apartment that I had in New York City with my wife. We were expecting our first kid. And, the real estate market was nuts in New York at that time. So I was able to I made like a significant profit off of that. And using that, I put a down payment on a space on Lower Fifth Avenue that was a dump. I borrowed $1 million from the bank. And I was broke, dude. So I'm like literally over $1 million in debt. I have a child on the way, and I'm starting a new practice from scratch. But like that to me is like, it's exciting.
So let me ask you this. So you started it from scratch, and I heard you just a minute ago. You said I slept in my office, like there was the grind. But what are transferable principles that you learned then that you're now teaching podcast listeners? You're now teaching business owners and even your own team. Like what were some of the things you learned then now that you're saying, hey, this is what I did and this works in any space? And what are some things our listeners today can glean from what you learned then?
That's another great question, man. So the first thing is it's all about quality and the golden rule. So there's ways to beat the system and get a lot of patients in the door quick, like Groupons and just stuff like that. But to me, it always devalued my service. Like what I offered was a really, really unique experience for my patients. I'm accessible to my patients. And it started literally with one patient. So my first week, I saw maybe 3 patients. My second week, I saw maybe 5 patients. But there's nothing, I don't care how many Yelp reviews you have or Google reviews you have or, how many ads you're placing. There's nothing more powerful than word of mouth. And it's a long, painstaking process because you have to wait for like one person to turn into 2, to turn into 4. And it could take years, and it really took me, by 3 months, believe it or not, I was actually, started to things were kind of grooving a little bit. But it took a while it took years before I even took $1 out of the practice as salary, And I was working a full-time job on the side at the same time. So I was able to support my family. But that is the single most important thing for the success of my practice. The other thing that's super important, and this is something that's kind of a theme through a lot of my podcasts, is self-belief. Because people will tell you no. Like when I started my private practice in New York City, a single solo private practice in New York City, was a thing of the past. People were like, you're crazy, man. Like that's not the way medicine's going now. It's all about group practices, working for a hospital system, like keeping, just basically pooling the demand for the resources that you buy and getting discounts and that sort of stuff. A one-man band, that wasn't flying at the time.
So what caused you, and I don't want to get off of what we talked about, but what caused you to make that decision versus
work for
you probably yielding to the path of least resistance, if you will?
It's interesting. So being board certified in 2 things, what I was doing was I was working for a lab 3 days a week when I first graduated, and I was working for a doctor 2 days a week seeing patients. So I was working in a lab 3 days a week, getting a salary, and I was working in a private practice in New York City, kind of eat what you kill type of system. So I get a percentage of whatever I generated. But, the practice the doctor was amazing, but the practice wasn't what I was about. Like I'm super I like sleek, modern, no clutter, paperless, which at that time was like not something that was normal. And my plan in my head was, okay, I'm going to do this for 2 to 3 years, and then I'll start my own office. I always dreamed of starting my own office, but I did it for 6 months. And I said, you know what? I was like, and my wife, she's She comes from a very entrepreneurial background. Her family was they were very 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 successful, and also the American dream. My father-in-law came here with nothing. My mother-in-law didn't even speak English, and they built this like gajillion-dollar, like this amazing business. So she always, and she had a very different upbringing than me, obviously, because she grew up with significantly more wealth. But she was also a lot more entrepreneurial than me. Like I guess for me, taking a risk was scary a little bit because I literally had nothing to fall back on.
For her, it's normal everyday practice. This is just what we do.
Totally, totally, and and I think part of that is having a little bit of a safety net. Like it's okay. I have this money to kind of play with. I think when my father-in-law did it, he took on a significant risk. Because he didn't have anything to fall back on. But as time went on, and by the time my wife was growing up, they had accumulated a significant amount of wealth to enable taking risks and exploring other ventures. So we didn't have, like I said, the only money we had together, and everything is together with us. We don't have anything separate. Like my wife likes to say, your money's our money, my money's my money.
I've heard that. I've heard that a few times.
I love that line. But yeah, so we had the money that we made from selling my apartment, and that was basically it. But she's like, listen, just put it all into the business. Let's buy a space. And if it weren't for her encouragement, I probably wouldn't have been so quick to do it that early on. But I was like, you know what? I was like, she really encouraged me, and we make a team, and
I love it. I love it. So quality in the golden rule, and then you talked about self-belief, and then I kind of rabbit trailed you just a little bit. Talk about self-belief. Like what has that meant to you in this journey, especially like when you said you literally had an epiphany, in the last 2 to 3 years. Talk to me about self-belief and how important that is, and how do you keep that level of self-belief?
Another great question, man. So self-belief is something that you actually develop, so it's basically getting little wins in your life that show you that, oh wow, I can really do this. So I have a lot more self-belief now than I had when I was a kid, where I was like an insecure kid wearing glasses in high school with like 7-year-old hand-me-downs. And I'm not saying that's why I didn't have self-belief. I'm just saying because of the wins I've accumulated over my life, it really enables me to have more self-belief. So now at facing a challenge, so I'll give you like a for instance. So I do, business aside, so I have 3 kids, and with each kid, like my wife would bounce right back into shape after the kids, but I would always you're raising the kids, you're drinking more beer, you're eating more crap, and like I literally gained 30 pounds. You would never be able to tell because I'm like a skinny framed guy,
right?
But like with my shirt off, it wasn't a pretty picture, And so it was 2012, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I had a bet with my brother-in-law, and he said, listen, let's see. He was in tremendous shape in his 20s, and the same thing happened to him. We were sitting on the living room on Thanksgiving. I had a scotch on my belly, sitting on the chair. He had and he looked over at me. He's like, dude, what the F happened to us, man? And I was never in great shape. He was, at one point. So he's like, hey, let's have a bet. Who's going to get into the best shape by Memorial Day? So I was like, all right. I was like, let's do it. So I got a trainer, and I was 196 pounds, 21% body fat at the time. And I got all the way down to, and I looked like I was dying. I looked at pictures of myself, but I got down to 154 pounds, 8% body fat.
Wow.
I'm 6'1", so it wasn't a pretty picture. I was like literally like super like a stick. But, and then from there, I basically told my trainer said to me, what's your goal? When he started with me. And I was like a flabby man boobs, gut, the whole nine, And I said, I want to be jacked. That's what I want. I want to look good with my shirt off. And he said, literally without even batting an eye, he said, it's going to take you 3 years to get there. I said, let's do it. And literally, I was on a plan. And this is what goals.
When was this? What year was this?
2012. So this was 2012.
Okay.
So this is what goal setting is all about, right? So my long-term goal was to get jacked, right? So like that's a 3-year plan. But in order to actuate that goal, there are little things you need to do every day to get there. So I track my calories. I used to weigh my food. I eat the same shit every day. Everything was super regimented. I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning if I had to get my workouts in. But every day was a win. So, every day was a win. So listen, winning 1 week turns into winning a month. Winning a month, winning.
I tell my clients in my online coaching group I do on Wednesday nights, think incremental, not monumental.
Totally.
You'll think incremental, And daily discipline habits every single day over time, incremental turns into monumental.
So that's funny because I'm similar, but I say think monumental, do incremental. You know.
There you go.
Um, so and this is kind of everything ties in together. Like, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Wherever you are, wherever you go, there you are. It's all the same stuff, right? So the way you are with any aspect of your life, you can't be like sloppy in one aspect of your life and super attentive to detail in another aspect of your life. It just doesn't work like that. That's just not how people are built. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So
yeah, one of the things I say is if you lack discipline in one area, it bleeds into every other area. If you exercise discipline, it breeds into every other area. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Totally. So, I'm at the point now, like literally, people look at me now and are like, wow, this must have been like a jock growing up. Like, he must have been like a super athlete. None of the above. I literally still to this day, I had to do this at this time because I had to get my workout in today. Like I got to get my 6 workouts in a week. And to me, that happens no matter what. So if I don't do that, I failed the day. So I have things that I have to do, So with social media, for instance, like in March of 2017, March of 2018, rather, I said, I'm going to post to Instagram every day. I haven't missed one day ever. And that's my win for the day for social media, So now I post to Instagram once a day. I post to TikTok once a day. I post to YouTube at least once a week. And I post a podcast at least every 3 weeks. I've never wavered from that. In years at this point. But that's what those little wins is what really builds into something. The other thing is that I like to talk about also is like, no one like gets into shape to say, okay, I'm in shape now. Now I'm going to eat like crap and I'm not going to exercise. It's the same thing with like success, like, and I don't know if you're familiar with David Meltzer, but
I've got David on Thursday. He'll be on here Thursday with me. Yeah.
He was with me. He was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. So he had, Connected to Goodness is his book, which is an amazing book. And I love like I said, there's one thing I take from every book. His whole concept of the arriver stage where, you've arrived, like I was there. That was my summer of 2017. And you're going to either fall from that stage, you're going to rise from that stage. You can't really exist on a plateau. It doesn't work that way. It's you can, but it's hard to. And, like success is the same thing. You don't get, and I'm not talking about monetary success. I'm not talking about like bling and stuff like that. I'm talking about a success-based mindset. Like you don't like hit a goal and say, okay, cool. That's it. Peace out. I'm done. You say, okay, cool. Wow. Holy crap. I just did this. I can't believe I did this. Now what do I do? Like, now what can I do?
What's next?
Right. I mean, that's what this is for me, Again, and for me, it wasn't like, okay, cool. Like, I have these successful practices. Now I'm going to buy another practice and another practice and another practice and grow my empire. Because you know what? I already hit the top of my game. I'm already top New York City dermatologist. I've already have, like, the material things and the financial freedom that those afford me. That's not going to give me any more value to my life. Right. Like, I don't need more of the same stuff. I need to do something that means it's more meaningful to me. And I'm not saying that's the deal for everybody. Everyone has their own goals, and that's something you have to define for yourself and what makes you happy and what gets you fulfilled. But this gives me so much fun. Like this conversation just makes my day. Like this is like, this is the type of stuff that I love, like really putting positivity into the world, especially now with all the shit that's going on right now.
Right.
I mean, God, it's crazy.
And you and I talked off air, so everybody knows, before we even hopped on air today, we talked about you're in New York. What's going on, man? What's that like?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's bad. So my office is on Lower Fifth Avenue, which is just blocks away from Union Square. It's a beautiful landmarked area of New York City, like pre-war historic buildings. And, it was ravaged. There's graffiti everywhere. Soho is just steps away from my office, totally looted and decimated. And, I'm going to tell you a sad story. One of my friends is a pharmacist in the Bronx, and she owns independent small business. She owns her pharmacy, has 6 employees, destroyed last night. Destroyed. What is she supposed to do now? She has 6 families that depend on her. And, it's just, I just don't even know how to wrap my head around her. I don't even know what to say. But it's just, it's really sad, Like I really feel for her.
So let me ask you a question. As a New Yorker, and this is a little off topic. I know we've been talking about arrival stage and goal setting and golden rule and quality and what do you think it's going? I posted. So my oldest daughter is dating a young black guy. I grew up in Detroit.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got so many black friends. I still hoop. I'm 51 years old. I still love to play basketball. So I've got a ton of friends who are black. So this has been painful for me. My daughter's she's dating a black guy, and they're probably going to get engaged soon. And we were at the beach together, and the three of us drove home, and for the first time it hit me. Wow, my grandkids are going to be mixed. So it gave me a different perspective as a white guy. I mean, I pastored for 12 years, so obviously I'm white, I'm a guy, I'm a conservative, and I vote Republican. And here I am with this young black guy. I'm 22 years old, 23 years old in my car. And it dawned on me, my kids are going to be mixed. So it caused me to, I had a completely different perspective. Even though I grew up in the inner city, even though I've got tons of African-American black friends that I talk to every day, now my family is going to have to go through some of this. What do you think is like one of the number one things as Americans, as individuals, we can do to overcome where we're at right now as a country?
Man, I wish I had an answer to that. So one thing, it all starts with empathy and understanding. The New York Times had like an 8-minute clip yesterday of the video sequence of what happened when George Floyd got arrested, and I was almost in tears when I was watching it. It was just so tragic, And I have a lot of friends who are cops, and I'm scared for them. They're New York City cops, and I'm scared for them because they're like targets, and it's overwhelming right now. But Chris Rock had this post. I don't know if this is his line or not. He's like, being in the police is like, it's like one job where you can't have a bad apple in the mix. It's like, you can't have like he kind of referenced it to like, you can't have a bad pilot. It's like, okay, this guy's, he crashes over 50 times. I mean, but it's harder with the police force, obviously, to really weed everybody out. But I like to think that police officer was an aberrance. He was a monster. Right. What he did was egregious. It's just not even human, and he'll have his reckoning.
But what can we do? Like, what can we do as Americans and as people who may not agree, or we may fall on a different side of the political fence? But what can we do?
Yeah, no, I think I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. We could vote. We could vote so that we're putting into office in our local communities. But this is all coming from an article I read. Barack Obama wrote this article on Medium yesterday, and it was a beautiful article. And regardless of your politics, it's worth reading because it really does sort of framework, a path forward. And it starts with putting folks into office that are aligned with the goals of the community, and that has to happen at the local level because every community is different, has different needs. Like a rural community has different needs than an urban community. A predominantly minority community has different needs than a predominantly white community. But this has been an ongoing struggle for centuries at this point. I mean, I can tell you as a brown guy who drives kind of like high profile type cars. Between my home and my Long Island office, which is literally 5 miles, I can't even tell you how many times I've been pulled over. And, I'm a guy who's like, I think I'm ethically ambiguous. So it's not like, okay, I get pulled over. It's racial profiling. I got pulled over on 125th Street a couple of years ago. I was in a Range Rover that was kind of macked out, and literally 5 cops with guns drawn surrounded my car. I'm a doctor. I'm like, I'm a law-abiding citizen. The only reason I was getting pulled over was because it was racial profiling.
Yeah, because of your car.
Because of my color.
Yeah, because of what you look like. Yeah.
So I don't know what I know what I can do, and part of that is just spreading positivity, positive message, and I think. The more of that's out there, it resonates whether it's latently or not. I don't have an answer. I really don't. And I do know that violence and looting is not the answer. Right. And I think a lot of folks are taking advantage of this opportunity. Listen, folks have been pent up in their apartments or their homes for the last couple of
months. Coming
off
of where we've been, it was the perfect storm. I was on with Grant yesterday, and Grant actually said, dude, when I was 18, 19 years old living in Louisiana, I'd be one of these kids in one of these stores. He goes, that's just where I would have been had I not just had, if this had happened then, I would have been one of those kids.
Yeah.
Like I would have been one of those kids. Dude, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're busy. Man, I love what you're doing. I love your heart. I love connecting with guys that really and you for me the whole time today was I was playing golf 5 times a week, driving my Ferrari to the country club, and I was just like, this can't be all there is. And from there to your podcast, to teaching people about mindset, to teaching people about, hey, if I can do this, you can do this as well. Last thoughts before we hop off.
Hey man, I just appreciate you, man. I appreciate you giving me this platform to to sort of speak about the things that are important to me. And so the more of this that goes on, the better place the world's going to be, man. I truly believe that.
Well, man, I appreciate you. Grateful for you. Listen, we're definitely got to connect July. I'd love to have you. I've actually got David is actually going to be on either June or July's. He may be on July's virtual summit that we're doing. I think it's the 21st, but I'll have my office reach out. And dude, I'd love to have you on, man. Thanks for being with us today. Hey guys, thank you for joining us today on our Growth Stack Drive Weekday Live. Thanks to Dr. Mudgil for being with us. Listen, you guys have a blessed day today. Write your goals down twice. Man, let's go after whatever is in your heart. Thanks, my friend. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.